Good evening. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Jamestown Public School Board to order. It is Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025, 5:30 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room. We'd like to welcome all those in the audience this evening. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Owen, would you read the school board norms this evening?
Sure. The board developed norms are to share and respect opinions and speak with a united voice once a decision has been reached, execute all duties of the school board in compliance with the North Dakota Century Code, properly prepare for meetings, and commit to assessing board effectiveness and ensure high-quality governance for all stakeholders.
Thank you. Moving on our agenda, we don't have anything under public communications. Does the board wish to declare any conflicts of interest? Any conflicts of interest? Any conflicts of interest? If not, moving on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion? Motion by Steve? Second by Aaron. We have a motion, a second for to approve our consent agenda. Any discussion, any clarifications, anything you'd like removed? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Under our regular meeting, we have nothing under recognition, correspondence, or reports tonight. Under board education, we have priority standards, and we have some Jamestown Public School teachers we'd like to invite forward. And please introduce yourself and tell us what grade level you are and just a little bit about yourself so we can get refreshed on that. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Gall, and I'm the middle school librarian.
Caitlin McInnes, I'm 7th grade English.
And I'm Candace Sedler, elementary instructional coach.
I'm Molly Fritz, and I teach 2nd grade at Lincoln.
And I'm Tony McIntyre. I'm an English instructor at JHS.
All right, well, thank you for having us here today. We'll get the presentation up on the board. Is it coming? We'll be right with you.
It says this, but we'll do a backup device, I guess. Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I just say something? And maybe as we're waiting for that, I just want to recognize our Jamestown Public Schools teachers for their willingness to come and provide board education. That was one thing that we talked about in, and I think it was Dr. Larson's point in our strategic plan and board education discussion that we wanted to ensure that we had more of our experts providing some board education for our board members and for our community. So thank you for being here and providing that for our board.
I believe the board members have the presentation.
Okay.
I'm not able
Sure.
to put this one yet either.
Well, then we will just go ahead and,
Slideshow.
yep. All right, well, again, thank you for having us here today. We are excited and working through, we're excited to be working through the process of transitioning to standards-based learning and reporting across the district. One thing that, as we begin here, this isn't necessarily new. We've been working with standards for decades, and so it's nice to be coming together as a unified group and working with the standards in a similar way, and I think our school district has done a pretty good job of getting us there, but those things are challenging. So the big question is why? Why are we doing it? Well, we want to have and provide a guaranteed and viable curriculum for all the students in our district and across the state of North Dakota, and so that's one of the things that we value about the process. As your presentation states, guaranteed means that every student has access to the same essential learning, no matter the teacher or school. And I think that's one of the key elements is that throughout the state of North Dakota, we're all working with the same standards. And we as individual school districts and grade levels can decide which priority standards that we want to work with. So that's one of the things that adds a little bit of variation, but nevertheless, they're all coming from that bank of information. Thank you. We're just on the first slide, viable, there we go. And then viable. The curriculum is realistic within the available instructional time, and that's where our professional opinion and our professional expertise comes into play. We know our students, we know their test scores, we know what they need, and so then we create that viable curriculum with our resources that we have available. And so we want to do that using our priority standards and proficiency scales. And that's what we're going to get into today, and you'll hear and see a lot of examples about what those look like. And they really make the learning transparent. So again, why? Why are we doing it? Well, we want to provide the best education for our students, and we also want to meet the strategic plan that has been set forth for us. And so we have some deadlines and metrics that we're looking at. Primary metric, 100% of courses and grade levels reporting proficiency on priority academic standards by 2027. So that's right around the corner. We're working hard to meet that, and I think on track in many ways. The primary metric of publication of 100% of grade level or course priority standards by beginning of the 2026-2027 school year. So we want to be able to have information in front of us and available to give really clear information about how our students are doing. As we've been working on getting ready for this, there have been lots of trains of thought and different ways to go about it, but we really want to keep in mind the real criteria. So readiness for next level learning. We want to pick standards that reflect a readiness for getting to the next level. So we want to push those students to be moving forward. The E, endurance, skills last beyond one test or grade, and going into the thinking of, a deeper learning, digging into the material, really understanding things at a deeper level rather than just surface memorization of facts and things like that. And we want to prepare our students to be real thinkers. A, for assessed on state or national measures. We want the standards and the priorities that we pick to be things that match up with what our students are going to be assessed on statewide. Leverage applies across multiple subjects and disciplines, and I think that's one of a really neat component that we have available to us with our PLC. Having the time set forth for us to be able to communicate and plan those things across multiple subjects and disciplines. So we're thinking about those things as we're choosing our priority standards. And that goes on to the teacher collaboration in PLCs. That's, I think, one of the most valuable parts of this process is that communication and being able to sit down and talk through how things are going. We're going to look at our information, we're going to look at numbers, we're going to look at statistics, we're going to look at scores and all of those things to get the best information for our students and the best teaching for them. I'm going to go on. So why priority standards are important? I think they add a lot of clarity to what we are doing in our classrooms, clarity for us as teachers, clarity for our students, and then clarity ultimately for other stakeholders, parents and board members and everyone across our district. Focus instructional time on the most critical learning goals. It allows us as teachers to know exactly what we are teaching and using that time to the best of our ability. I think one of the great things about focusing on standards and those priorities is that it kind of pushes us as educators to step away from maybe what we've always done. Maybe some of us have always had that favorite unit that we want to teach, and maybe it doesn't necessarily meet the standards, and this gives us that impetus to move on and look at something different and meet the standards that our state has for us. And I've already mentioned the clarity for teachers, students, and families, mile-wide, avoiding that mile-wide, inch-deep curriculum and really digging in. And then build a strong foundation for college, career, and life readiness. Again, I think that standards-based grading and instruction really provides that depth that we want our students to have. It encourages them to dig into something and reach beyond just the basics, and that's what we need people to do. I mean, there are a lot of things that can do that basic thinking for us, right? We want our students to be able to think beyond that. And so now we're going to get some examples from different levels. Here comes the elementary grade. Oh, we have one more. I skipped a slide. Let me go back. So here's an example, a basic example of what a proficiency scale would look like. We are aiming for that level 3. So as we as teachers are developing our proficiency scales, that's where we put the standard. That's the standard that we're looking for, and that comes directly from the state. And then we work down to and look at that level 2, and that's the basic things that you need, the vocabulary, the basic information that you're going to need to be able to get to the 3. So 3 is proficient, right? 2 is where you're almost there, you're getting there, you have the basic information, but you need to work a little bit harder to get to that 3. By the end of the year, that's where we want our students, or by the end of our time that we're working on that standard. Some of our students might get up to that above grade level, or not necessarily above grade level always, but just above that proficiency. Maybe they're just pushing themselves to think more independently about that, or more creatively. We talk a lot about depth of knowledge as we're doing these things, so we want our students to be working at that higher depth of knowledge. So that's a very basic way of thinking about the proficiency scales. And now we're going to get into what it actually looks like at each grade level, or building level, I guess.
So on the screen, you see some examples from the elementary grades. On the left-hand side, you see the educator scale. So in the middle would be the 3.0. Like Jen said, that's the language exactly from the state that matches our priority standard. The 2.0 includes some of the foundational skills along with the vocabulary for that standard. And then the 4.0 shows how students can go above and beyond once they master that level 3. On the right-hand side, you see the same standard in a student-friendly scale. So this year, if you walk through any of our classrooms, you'll see these posted in most, hopefully all, of our classrooms, so that students can see where they're at any given day. Talking about some of the impacts that we have on teachers and students and families. Like Jen said, the guaranteed curriculum, it ensures consistent expectations for all the teachers. So whether your student attends Lincoln or Roosevelt or Gusner, it doesn't matter what teacher they have. We're all working from the same consistent standards. We're using the same assessments to gauge understanding, and we're reporting in the same way. So it just provides that equity for all buildings. It also helps teams when they're planning and differentiating instruction. If we are looking at a group of students and analyzing their data and we're seeing that this group of students already has mastered the 3.0 scale, how can we push them above and beyond? We go to our proficiency scale to see what that 4.0 is. If we have a group of students who has not yet reached proficiency, we go to our scale, we look at our 2.0, and we need to see what foundational skills they may not have mastered yet so that we can really hone those skills and then build them up to a 3.0. Pacing as well. Jen talked a little bit about pacing. We have a lot of those discussions at our grade level teams about maybe one year one of the standards is challenging to that group of students and you need to take more time before they master it. It's okay if you know it's a priority standard because it allows you to take a little bit more time to master that skill, and it allows you to adjust pacing according to that group of students and the scale that or the standard that you're working on.
So the impact it has on students, the proficiency scale offers transparency. So the students can see exactly what they need to do to reach that target scale. And in response to the Marzano focus model, teachers in some grade levels have started to help the students track their own growth through the scales. So here's just a quick example of like what we're starting in some of our grade levels. is students can look at the student-friendly model on one side, and then there's like a graph on another, and then they're able to see where they're at, and they can track their own growth. And then if there's choice activities, having these scales allows the students to choose an activity that's at their own current understanding and level. And then the impact at home, when the scales are sent home or when parents look online, we're hoping that they'll be able to see what skills the student have mastered, and they're able to also see what skills the students still need to work on. So when parents are looking and they're wanting to figure out maybe a different way or a better way to help them provide some additional support, they'll know exactly which areas need some more focus on or some more help working with them.
All right, and I'll kind of echo quite a bit of what has already been said, but as far as how our priority standards came about, so each subject varies in how many North Dakota state standards that they have. So like our history classes have 6. Well, all 6 are going to be their priority standards, whereas 7th grade English has over 25. Well, realistically, it's hard to have that depth that we need for all 25. So we've identified 13 of them to say, these are the 13 we're going to go really deep with. We touch on all the other ones, and it's not that they're not important, but we really want to go deeper with those 13. So it's really been able to help with that clarity for us as teachers and even the students, as well as by the end of your 7th grade year, your 8th grade year, these are the big things that you need to know to be successful in the next grade moving forward. So very similar to what you just saw with elementary, this is one of the state standards for 7th grade. We were able to have a group of educators at the state level come up with our scale for us, which was really nice because then we could dig in deeper what it looked like in our classrooms, in our school, and for our district. So we also have the ones that look similar to what elementary had with the Blue Jay symbol on it and different things like that. But we also have the resource of the state. Math also has this, and I believe they're working on other ones. Okay. So we would take that and then take our proficiency scales and then develop specific I can statements for our students, which is like the example up there, so they can clearly see where they're at, what we're working on, and it's in that student-friendly language. So our teacher impact, a lot of this echoes what elementary said, really helping the teachers stay focused and intentional with what we're teaching them, but also being able to go look back and say, how do we know that they have learned that? Where are they? Do we need to implement some reteaching days or catch some kids up in different areas? We've already seen a shift in a lot of our students. I've heard already this year kids asking like, okay, if I'm at a 3, what does the 4 look like? Or what practice do I need to do to get that? And I think that's a testament to a lot of the other grades that have been working on it throughout the year, that the kids are having that mindset shift to think not necessarily, oh, I'm doing good or bad, but what can I work on to get even better and really round out my education. And then at home impact, very similar, hoping that they have that detailed feedback. And we've talked in the middle school a couple times, kind of like your kid going to a well child visit. Doesn't mean that they're doing poorly, but hey, we got to work on XYZ just a little bit more. So that's at the middle school.
All right. I've got some handouts that I'm sorry I went old school and printed some stuff, but I'll give you a couple.
Do you want me to pass them out while you're talking?
That'd be great. Two different. Again, I'm at Jamestown High School, and at the high school level, our students are pretty ingrained in the grading system they're familiar with. There's a lot of apprehension about standards-based grading. Also, the staff is wrapping their heads around it, trying to make sure that they understand it so they're giving a really good product to our students and nobody's getting left in the lurch. To kind of give you a sense of where we're at with the different priority standards, We started the priority standards several years ago, focusing on what do we really want students to know and be able to do, and how can we assess that. But for in English in particular, we're on like our third iteration of these standards. We had a standards revision in 2023, same for math and science. Both of those had 2023 revisions. Indigenous and world languages had 2021. Social studies is 2019, and so we're working on several different kind of timelines all throughout the building, going, how long have I had my standards to reprioritize, refocus, and make sure that they're kind of in fighting shape when we hit go on standards reference or standards-based grading. So with that, this past fall, JPS, with the help of PowerSchool and whichever of our student information systems we're working with, began the process of actually tagging standards to an assessment. Our goal last year was, okay, let's tag some to some assessments, right? Just a few. And so our students, our teachers began the process of utilizing that portal. Hopefully every teacher got in there at least once to get some assessments in there that were connected to a North Dakota state standard. This fall, our goal was to create a standards-based unit that we are going to deliver. I've given you an example of mine, so forgive its shoddiness, but we took a look at what standards are there, what skills are we hitting, any kind of assessment rubrics that are involved with that, and what kind of are the ways that we're approaching that both formatively and summatively in order to get the data that we're looking for. Where are we gathering this data so that there's clarity for students and as a discussion with parents in that communication piece. That standard-based unit is based off of the priority standards you see there for that one in particular is English 4. As the middle school noted, English, we've got 17 priority standards, 17 things that we said, listen, this is kind of non-negotiable for us in our building. And we did have some help with the NDREAs. So our different departments are at different levels with how comfortable they are with this. Some people are full go, let's put standards on every possible thing. And others are looking at, okay, I'm being asked to do one unit and get comfortable with one unit. And so that's kind of where they're at in that process. The PLC process is really important for us so that we've got that horizontal alignment where it doesn't matter which teacher your student has for North Dakota Studies, they are all gonna get these guaranteed and viable curriculum, and they'll be assessed to this level, and it shouldn't matter which teacher they have because there are conversations going on. The process has also really helped us kind of focus that PLC on what are the practices that are being effective and what is working for us. With that, how does it impact collaborative planning? Well, it is a great conversation piece. It's no longer about, I want to do this unit because it comes up with really cool things. Okay, what are those really cool things? All right, and let's get back to what the high quality education we expect for JHS students. Really making sure that the units that we're using have a purpose, they're driving, and they're enduring for our students so they walk out of JHS very well prepared for their future success. Beyond that, what is your perspective on how does this impact or you anticipate will impact students' ability to take ownership of their learning and track their growth? At the high school level, I'll be honest, that big piece I gave you with the scales is a lot. And we could break it down even further. I could put 500 things in the level 2 that are errors for why they can't write an argumentative essay. They can't write complete sentences yet, okay, or whatever that may be. With that, I try on my individual assessments, and you can see that in the unit plan, I've got kind of these focused assessment-specific rubrics that are still attached to those same standards, but they're very specific. On this assessment, these are the things I'm looking for. And I found that works better for my students than looking at the whole scale and everything that's there. With this detailed level of feedback, I've always gotten very appreciative parents with the feedback, but I've always tried to provide a lot of feedback regardless. And I think that's true of a lot of our teachers. We've tried to give that really strong feedback, and we just hope that we at the high school level are not creating more apprehension for our families with this shift than clarity. We really want to make sure that our stakeholders are bought in on this and understand, hey, this is what 4-3-2-1 mean. And it is pretty simple to us who have been talking the language, but it can be challenging for those who, intimidating for those who are used to what A, B, C, D, F meant. So, yeah, thank you.
Awesome. All right, so in summary, we use our priority standards to plan lessons and scaffold our learning, or the student learning, meaning that we kind of know where they're at and what they need. We use it to provide feedback that's clear and actionable, and to track progress for individuals and groups, and to communicate with families about student growth. And I think, like we said before, it really can potentially give clarity when you look at what does that A mean? Well, instead of the A, now we can look at that 3 and say my student is able to, knows and is able to do this specifically. So that's our hope for our students and our families. All right, did you have any questions for us? We'll let you read those takeaways. We've kind of stated them already. Any questions at all?
Does the board have any questions? Jason, go ahead.
Thanks all of you for your work, not only in this, but presenting this evening. Some of my questions were centered around Mr. McIntyre's comments on family, engaging stakeholders. I guess one of my concerns is, and it's, you know, if we've thought about this, but if a child is at a 2, is the perception of a parent going to be that they're below average? I'm just curious about how that communication is being sent. And one of my very first questions is, you know, parent-teachers conferences, what are those going to look like this year? Are they going to look different maybe at some levels than before?
One of the kind of key mind shifts of the whole standards-based grading movement is it's no longer norm-based communication saying we need to be done with the bell curve. And so that question about below average hopefully becomes secondary to this is the standard that we believe they need to be successful. We call it standards reference instead of norms referenced. But I would say that there are plenty of parents out there who probably don't quite understand that 2 just means this is a skill we want to see improve. It's a targeted area of growth for this individual student. And yeah, I'm not perhaps the person, because I'm on the inside of these conversations, to be able to answer, have we done enough to explain why a 3 is what we want and how that relates to what we used to think about grades?
I just want to add one little thing to that, and I think we're starting to talk a little bit about this at the middle school as 2 being the beginning level, you know, and all of our students are coming in right around that 2 or maybe even a 1. And so, yeah, it's about kind of educating our parents and our students to understand that's okay. You know, we've got all year to get to a 3. So that'll be a fun conversation. Parent-teacher conferences, I think that'll look different, but we'll get there. I don't know how that's going to look.
Did you have a follow-up, Jason? Go ahead, do with your follow-up, and then.
Are we still doing letter grades at all for this year? Is there a transition there?
At the high school level, we do have letter grades. You still have a conventional grade, so we have what we call standards reference grading, where along with that report, you're getting this standardized report where you're getting your scores in relation to the standard, but along with that, you're having the 100-point scale that we're used to. There may be some teachers who are further along in that process towards that transition than others. I know that most of the people I've talked to are also using that conventional grade to move. I'm not sure what it's like at the other levels.
Middle school, we have switched to 4-3-2-1, so they will not get that traditional ABCD.
Elementary also, last year we switched to Empower for our grading system, our reporting system, so that we used 4-3-2-1 as of last year.
Jacob, did you have something, or was it Aaron? Oh, I saw a hand over there. Go ahead, Aaron.
So under the traditional grading system, it was turn in your homework, pass this test, you'll get a letter grade, and that's how we determine your proficiency. With this, you're demonstrating a skill at a certain proficiency level. How will that be demonstrated, or how will that be assessed, or is it you still going to be taking a test or how does that work?
At the high school level, we've worked to be more mindful about the types of assessments we're giving. Looking at, is a multiple choice question the right way to deliver their mastery of this content, or is there a better way to get to that? So a lot of it came back to, yes, how do we redesign assessment to really get to what the standard is? And so yes, there are still conventional tests being given. There are still tests that you would recognize, but there are also perhaps more open-ended writing questions. There might be more performance-type assessments that hopefully are getting closer to what the actual language of the standard is asking. And then we can have a discussion and a feedback, and perhaps a feedback loop about how we are doing in relation to the standard. One of the things with standards-based is they have to have an opportunity to kind of work back, and that kind of feels like it flies in the face of like test retakes and what we've thought about test retakes. But going, okay, can you get feedback, and then can you come in another time and have another opportunity to reach that proficiency level on my assessment? If I've deemed you need remediation there, we also still need time to create that sort of strategic, systematic way of doing intervention for students who are not yet at the proficient when we're getting near to the end of the year or that kind of thing.
At JMS, a lot of the same, but we, within our units, have made sure that we have kind of those checkpoint assessments, if you will, of, okay, we've talked now for a little bit, we've done some explicit teaching, let's test where you're at, and then from there, we maybe would have a reteaching day where maybe the kids that were at that 3 level get this particular activity to work on, or maybe something that's reaching towards that 4, and then maybe meeting with the teacher is the 2s or the 1s, and so we can kind of get them there, then they get their other assessment, and then we would still have that summative or that very end, but we would hope that we have caught those kids. If they still didn't do well on that final assessment, we do another reteach, or when we cycle back through within that year, because by the end of the year we want them at that 3, if not sooner, but we would know, okay, we really got to check in with that kid first, or whatever we need to do there. So we still have assessments like that, but like he was saying, there may be a little bit more different, where it's, what's your answer? Okay, now defend it. Why do you think that? Or things like that. It could be written, it could be verbal, kind of depends on the subject.
I'm just going to add one more thing, because grades are, it's a big deal, and it's assessing is challenging, but one of the really nice things about standards-based grading and assessing is that we take some of those things, like you had mentioned, turning in homework. Sometimes that becomes a negative for kids if they don't turn it in on time, and we want all of our students to be doing the practice and turning things in on time, but those late assignments and things like that the hope is they're not being reflected in the actual grade. That's more of a conduct or a behavior piece, and so we are also grading that end of it. And so then the grade, the 3 or the 2, is really an indication on that academic work or on that standard of their ability versus, their ability to meet a deadline,
To do the work,
Right,
demonstrate
to
the
do the
skill
work or
versus
to,
doing
right.
the work.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the really great things about the grade on a standards-based scale, because you really know that's what the student knows what to do.
So do you see this as a cultural shift on approach in, like you mentioned, turning in homework late? Used to, you don't get the grade for that homework, and so therefore your overall grade is going to be reduced as a negative. But if they're able to demonstrate the skill at that proficiency 3 or 4 level, how does that shift in, I guess, from your perspective, the teacher's perspective on approach?
Yeah, that's a big question, and it's partly a motivation question. How do you encourage those students to do the practice? Because practice is important, so we want to figure out how to do that. But it also, if a student already knows how to do that and is able to get that 3, what can we do as a teacher or as a community to challenge them to reach beyond that? Sure, there are more thoughts.
So, one of these things that we hope to do is move beyond compliance, right? I can do all the work, I can get it done, and that keeps me in good graces. We really want to be providing feedback that is, hey, you did poorly on this test, and I can tell you, based on the questions that you had problems with, this is where you're struggling with this. Again, as we're moving forward, and one of the kind of last steps of any scale being built is not the 2, it's actually the 4. Those enrichment opportunities. What do I have for that student who doesn't need the practice, who can move pretty quickly through that? And again, that's one of those things that as we're coming to it, I think we need opportunity and time to develop some of those things going, how can I challenge that student who may not be doing the daily work, but can always grade out at proficiency or above when it comes to the thing I'm asking them to do? And then we can perhaps have a separate conversation about behavior, but it's not reflected in how I'm evaluating the quality of their work.
Owen, go ahead.
Yeah, this is really great stuff, and I commend you all for at the different building levels. I know you're all jumping in with different perspectives, and we realize there's different timelines on all this stuff. But my question is just kind of reading through, and Tony gave really well detailed rubric here with words like delineate and analyze and things like that. And just wondering about the nomenclature and how, sorry if this is thinking too far ahead, but I know you're trying to get this at the building levels, but how we're going to kind of create continuity on getting students used to what does it mean to delineate, you know, what is, how do we standardize, I guess, the way we're measuring these standards would be
Yeah, I think on that, right, you're looking at a high school level 1 versus a second grade 1. And so as part of our job is to make sure that if it's written this way for a teacher to understand, can our students understand it at their level where they're at? And if they get a word like that where it's like, all right, not everybody maybe knows that, well, it's on us to say, hey, this is what this word means and where to go from there. So while they might see those different adjectives and things like that, that depth of knowledge at the different levels, if we come across kids that aren't understanding, we just explain our ICANs or our scales to our kids, put them in their language.
That makes sense.
Honestly, when we, as an educator, as we were going through those standards, we spent a lot of time talking about Bloom's taxonomy and about, like, at the elementary level, it might start with just identify. Well, then when we go to our 3 and our 4, well, what's the next step? After identify, how can you analyze? How can you take things from one skill to the next, or one topic to the next, one content area to the next? So, I mean, I feel like that's all part of it, is teaching kids what it means to analyze, to critique, all those verbs that go along with it. I mean, as an educator, it was very eye-opening for me, too, to see, okay, I knew my standards, but I didn't really pick apart exactly the different levels that I'm being asked to do, and then seeing that vertical alignment with the other grade levels, too.
And just one last word on the vertical alignment. We cannot expect our parents to be experts in all these standards. We can't. This is one of my classes. I have 3 different sets of standards, 3 different, my AP classes are on totally different sets of standards than these, because that's what the College Board is looking for. So with those, the North Dakota State standards in particular are vertically aligned really well, and so there is a progression within the standard itself of the complexity of language. And I, as a senior teacher, oftentimes my I can statements, my learning targets are just straight up the standard because I'm going, you're a 12th grader. We should be able to expect this because I know that our other JPS professionals have done a great job of scaffolding up to that point. So.
Any other questions? Oh, Jacob, go ahead.
This is actually a good segue to that topic, so Tony, you might have to step back up. Yeah, my question is, what are we doing when students aren't reaching a standard? So this was very helpful for me to see it for the first time. So as a 12th grade English teacher, you have implement proper verbal and nonverbal communication for the task and situation. That's the standard 3. So if you have a senior that, let's say, just never learned whatever the standard 3 was for grammar as a freshman.
Yep.
And they've gotten to your class because they've moved up. How are you as a teacher handling that?
Okay.
I'll let you answer that first, and then I'll kind of build on that.
I think it is a triage of skills. I'm recognizing, okay, what do I think is important? Need number 1, how many months do I have left? And what can I work with them individually? When we have writing days, I might identify that student as, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to kneel down next to that kid, and we're going to talk a little bit more, and I might give them an outline that I don't hand to everybody. It's a little bit of that differentiation and individualization that hopefully my numbers, the 4, the 3, the 2, and 1, can kind of help me understand, this is a student who's got it. I want to give them the time they're owed, but I might need to spend more time to get every student to proficiency. And there might be another way that I can challenge this student to go further without necessarily spending as much time right beside them working through the nitty-gritty.
All right. No, thank you. So I'm going to kind of follow up and segue. This is more maybe, Adam, for you as well. How are we as a district using these standards to think about how we are going to develop our future curriculum and even class schedule, especially at the upper level? So I'm thinking if we're moving from middle school to high school, we've got a group of kids that are at a range of standards. If they all start pooling to a certain standard, maybe we've got a bunch of kids in math that are at a standard 2. Again, you know where I come from with this. When you get to algebra 2, you need to know how to FOIL that you hopefully learned in Algebra 1. You can't do any of the skills unless you can FOIL. If we have a whole group of kids, what are we doing with that kind of that kind of situation? Are we asking our teachers in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 to change their curriculum drastically, to change their standards? Is there the potential to craft a whole new class that's just we have a huge group of kids that are substandard, they're standard 1 or standard 2 where they should have been a 3 when they passed the last grade. How are we as a district? I think this program gives us the ability to do that and to hone in, but are we prepared as a district to do that, especially at the upper level?
There were 7 parts to your question.
Yes,
So I'm gonna start off just with the first thing, that how we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it together. That's the most important part of this, is that we're going to do it together. We're going to do it together as a board. We're going to do it together as a community. We're going to do it together as each individual PLC, because we've got clear data with how to respond. Do I know exactly what that system looks like? I have a vision of what that system could look like. It looks like what you're talking about. How do we respond and intervene on the standard level? When you get to high school, that spread, and Tony, could articulate this even better than I can, that spread sometimes becomes so significant that you're really challenged in an Algebra 1 class or an English 4 class with all the different levels of students. But as we're building up and we've got this set of guaranteed priority standards, we should know what we're standing on from the prior level. So does that have to do with, does a student repeat a grade level, or do we have a schedule that supports them in getting the level of support that they need to master those priority standards, so we know that at the next grade level they're more ready for that? The other thing that I think we need to think about more holistically is just the amount of time planning, preparing, designing assessments, but then also giving the level of feedback You know, Tony's kids get an amazing level of feedback no matter what system he is in, because he really is dedicated to making sure that they have that feedback to improve. But the idea is that we can get clearer, we can have that progression of learning for them, so kids can take a little bit more ownership in that too with his feedback. But I do think we need to rethink, if you've got 150 kids, it looks different than if you have 22, looks different than if you have 80 in that level of feedback. So from a systems and schedule standpoint, we're going to have to figure that out together to better align and get the outcomes that we want for our kids. That's the shortest way I can answer your 7-part question.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. That was a very long description. And I guess you kind of hit on what my next follow-up and concern is if students aren't hitting a specific standard, what are we doing if they move on? You know, if they're at a standard 2 in a certain subject, and they never, you know, show signs of getting to a standard 3, but then the next year level, so, you know, Tony's at usually you're all seniors, right, Tony?
Juniors and seniors.
Juniors and seniors. That, like, are we handicapping our students almost, that they're never going to be able to get to a standard 3 at the final grade level because they never mastered, you know, the standard 2 at a lower level?
Yeah, part of that is system design. I would say that within a building, we're currently doing a better job of communicating that. You know, from 9th to 10th grade, those teachers work together all the time. They have an opportunity to collaborate on a little bit more vertically. We probably need to do a better job from 5th to 6th grade, although there are some meetings that take place, and then that transition from 8th to 9th grade as well. But currently, or in the prior system, a kid not having mastery in something, that could be masked in an overall average of all of those skills, when this is one very important skill that's necessary for, you know, moving from Algebra 1 into Algebra 2. They may have gotten a D, and that was an average of all of those skills, or they got a C, and that was an average. They were really good at some and not as good at others. At least with this system, we can know what they know and can do based on the reporting that we'll have, because it'll be separated out and not aggregated into one omnibus symbol.
I'll finish with one last comment so you won't have to answer any more questions. But you guys talked about your vertical integration, talking to some teachers at both the middle school and high school level. I would say, what is our building to building, you know, integration look like? And I would encourage that we have more of that. Just based on my conversations with those teachers, we're not having that, especially the middle school to high school, that I think we need to focus on doing that at the district level.
I think that's fair, that we know that that's an area. You know, one of the things we're concentrating on is building the foundation for this system, and having some of those conversations now are pretty important. For example, you know, we've got Algebra 1 that we teach in 8th grade. We've got foreign language that kids are getting high school credit. And so I know that question came up. They're still going to have a letter grade conversion for those students, just because of where they're at in the transcript process too. So.
I'm thinking even like at the PLC level.
Yep.
My wife needs to be talking to teachers in middle school. Like, you know, she's isolated in her bubble. I told her to move right now. Like,
Yeah.
you guys need to force her.
You know this is recorded, right? That's it. Yeah. But no, but to your point, I think that we could all agree that that's something that we aspire to and need to put some more priority on as well.
Yes. I
Yep.
had the opportunity to talk to other math teachers. None of them are talking to each other.
Yeah.
Them all to talk to.
Yep. Thank you.
Jason, go ahead.
Last question. On that same line of thinking, when we get to upper elementary or upper middle, you know, middle school or high school, we talk about electives. Is there a plan to work with the elective? I think of CTE and all the math and science that's going on there, those types of things. Is that going to be in the plan also to reinforce what the core teachers are doing? I'm just wondering if that's going to be in the thought process.
Well, so specific to CTE, another great board education opportunity would be Mrs. Eckert talking about how each year we get a report on how CTE students do in their math and ELA assessments. So last year they had a priority of how is math integrated into CTE. So they looked at their standards and they made a priority out of that, making sure that they were reinforcing math instruction in all of our CTE courses. There's great opportunity when you're on a standards-based system for interdisciplinary collaboration. I'm not sure if you're aware of the Empower Ed program at Bismarck Career Academy, and students are able to get some credit in CTE classes for standards that they're mastering that might be in other subjects. They kind of pull that together in an alternative program there. That's one model and way of looking at it, but I think down the road the opportunity is there for kids to demonstrate mastery of standards, beyond the scope of just one discipline.
Steve?
I like what it seems to me we're seeing for a clear path forward for ones and twos, maybe more than just the grade levels we're providing. But I'm just kind of curious about fours. What sort of opportunities do we have? And maybe it's different at elementary than it, our middle school and high school. But what are we doing with them to provide opportunity or push them further?
I'll take a first crack at it, but I really want to hear from them. It's not so if where we're at. The elementary implemented last year. I would say that this is a year where they're working on more of those score 4 activities or generating ideas for how students can demonstrate that score 4. So we start with making sure that we've got our 3-level activities and assessments aligned, and then score 4 is kind of a secondary priority for us. So right now, what we're doing a great job of is identifying who those kids are that are mastering earlier. And I think we're adding some activities in for them, but we're probably not at score 4 for all priority standards yet, even at elementary. Unless you guys want to.
Yeah, I would echo that at the middle school. I think where we're at currently, we're really focused on our 3s and then those 2s. And within this year, everyone's kind of reaching and hoping to kind of, if you will, figure out their 4s. We've thought of them, they're on our brain. I know there's quite a few that have played with it as far as maybe it's a reteaching day and the kids that have shown they're ready for a 4, they're gonna build a game to go with whatever the unit they're doing with or something like that where they're constructing that higher level depth of knowledge that we're looking at. But I think a lot of us too are playing with that and trying to think outside the box on what does that look like, so it's not just more work because you're doing better, but it's something that drives them forward, it's interesting to them, and then also elevates their learning that much more.
And I guess at the high school level, one of the things that I appreciate about my subject area is I don't necessarily feel that I need to build a different assessment to evaluate a score 4, because there's a level of writing that is clear and does the job, and there's a level that is subjective and gets to that artful level and that kind of thing. But I do see how sometimes there are subjects that do have a more like, this is concrete, you got the answer right or wrong, so that level 4 needs to be something else, like designing, putting your physics project to use with a model, a theoretical model that kind of tests that and demonstrates you're moving beyond the standard. When staffing allows, we've had electives in the past that are there for those level 4 students. We are offering more dual credits and AP courses than we have ever done, which I do think is an opportunity for them, but it's not always the opportunity they're looking for. But I do think as we grow the electives, and specifically those disciplinary electives that are really about challenging specific things and allowing the kids to get to that deeper area in English or social studies or science beyond the general science class that perhaps they've been allowed, It's a great thing when we have the ability and the manpower to do it.
Jamie.
I really love the standard-based learning, and I love that we can pinpoint each little thing. You know, a kid might be doing great in multiplication, division, but fractions not so much. My question is, though, when you have all these students at different levels and different tiny pinpoints of each unit or that you're teaching, do you feel you have enough time and support to get to each student to hit them where they need the most help in? Does that make sense, what I'm saying? How can we better support that?
I'll just speak to the elementary examples. Like, for example, we haven't even started PLCs for yet this year. Like, we're going to start next week. But this week, I already had a third grade team that wanted to meet because they know their first check-in is going to be on rounding, and they have some kids that don't have rounding. And then the next one, they're already looking ahead. So we're utilizing our Title I staff that's pushing in instead of pulling out and doing a separate program all day, every day, or the whole ELA block. They're targeting the scales and what the students do and do not know. So there might be a group that's taking the 4.0s that are ready to go above and beyond, and they're doing a small group at the 4.0. The classroom teacher might have a majority of the kids that are still working at the 3, and then another paraprofessional or Title I teacher might be taking the students that are working at the foundational skills to get them to the 3. So I feel like our PLC time in our buildings, and then also the grade level team times, allow us that time that we have never had in the past to be able to do that. And then our support staff, our paraprofessionals, and our Title I teachers have really been a benefit to being able to hit all the different standards at all the different levels at any given time. Could we use more help? Of course, anytime. But yeah, we have a good support system now.
Yeah. I think, kind of to echo that, I think if you ask any teacher, we always want more time for all the things. But at the middle school, I know we're trying to kind of shift some of how we used to do. And so you'll see a lot more small groups or some of that where we are being able to get kids, at least if it's not one-on-one, in a smaller setting to pinpoint a lot of that, or cycling through them so we hit that standard multiple times a year. I think everyone's still playing with it and what's going to fit best for each classroom and each teacher on how best to get all of your students. But I see that shift happening within it, and I know, like Candace said, with PLCs and common planning time and even team time, we're really able to share and collaborate and kind of have a feel on where all of our kids are at and who needs what supports.
Along that same line, I just want to pat Caitlin on the back a little bit because she and her teaching partner do a lot of sharing between their classrooms too. You know, they're teaching the same thing. And so sometimes they'll see a group of students who should move over to Caitlin's classroom and work with Caitlin, and another group is over with Mrs. Wenzel working with her. And so I think that creativity is also really commendable.
More time would be great, but 24 hours in a day is 24 hours in a day. So yes, we will always take more time. There's always things that we would love to get off our plate and be able to focus in on these things so that every single kid is getting the support they need over the course of a day. 55 minutes or 42 minutes is a finite amount of time to get all that done. But sometimes it also does come back on us and some support within our PLC to kind of embrace that instructional redesign that allows us to go, I'm going to let this go so that I can do the stations, or I can do the things that allow me that face-to-face and allows me the small group time that I need. So yes, we need to be more thoughtful about the way we go about things. I think people are working really hard to embrace that, but it is a mind shift for us that people are working towards, and any way we could find more time would be awesome.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Well, we'd definitely like to thank you for taking your evening and coming and sharing with us. I haven't seen this much board engagement in a really long time, so good job. You have all of us engaged here, so fantastic. It's really great information, and it's great information for our families also to hear. And I know you've been doing a good job in communicating with our families, but I think there's always questions about, and there'll be more questions. And so we look forward to you coming back and continuing to share where we're at. But we can certainly see a tremendous amount of work and time and effort has gone into this. And even just kind of a mind shift about how we view how we're grading in education, and that's a lot to take on top of everything else that you're doing for us in a day. So thank you so much. Moving on to our superintendent's report, Dr. Lack.
Thank you. You have my written report. I'll go through these items. The elementary enrollment report. So this is the K through 5 level. We did talk about this somewhat, in thinking about the transition that we would have, moving from 5 sections or 5 buildings, 8 sections to 4 buildings and 7 sections. Of course, there's challenges along the way with making this transition, but I do want to recognize Amy Newstel, Anya Kurtz, who do our registrations. They've done just a fantastic job. The fact that we have had only a handful of questions, and maybe Amy would say it's maybe a little bit more than a handful, but we have had, the fact that we've only had the questions that we've had have really been a testament to the work that has been done to communicate where our families are being placed, and how the changes have impacted families. I think we had those questions closer to the summer, and so when registration has come, that has been as smoother than it really could have been anticipated, and that's only because of the hard work of those 2 individuals. And so you see our numbers there at each of the levels, K through 5. I will recognize that, with kindergarten, those are, even in our new reality, those kindergarten numbers are a little bit lower than what we would have anticipated. So this represents maybe a smaller class in that new reality of where we're at in terms of student numbers. And then you can see the breakdown and how that works at each level. And just a reminder that Louis L'Amour is our only single section building. So when you're looking at those numbers, you can either cut those in half for all of the other buildings. For the school board retreat, I identified 3 different days, and hopefully these will work. And unless there is a desire to have it earlier or a little bit later, I'll send out a doodle to see if these dates work for you. And if you do have a topic for the school board retreat, please let Dr. Larson or myself know so we can start planning around what that board retreat agenda would look like. I just wanted to pass along the next item. We did some pretty robust training, so we have some requirements for our staff to receive training on policy AAC, that's non-discrimination, anti-harassment. And so there's regulations around requirements for all of our staff to be trained. We do that for onboarding for our new staff, and we've done an all-staff training in the past. We felt it was so important that we wanted to bring back our legal counsel to provide a training again for all of our staff. So all of our staff heard that same or a similar training again. The feedback I've received was really very positive. Staff really understanding what their responsibilities are to this policy at every level. I think Meredith did a fantastic job of providing some very real examples and specifics that our staff can look to understand what their responsibilities are under policy AAC. Additionally, we brought in Meredith at a different training to come and do to our school administrators to do investigations training specific to AAC, ACEA, KACA, and KACB. We know that the investigation is a big part of that, those policies, and we wanted to make sure that we had consistency amongst our administrators on the procedures and what best practice looks like in that as well. Later on in the agenda, you'll have strategic planning, and Mr. Roberts is going to go through and talk about what the committee is recommending for the strategic plan. Just a few takeaways that you can anticipate as you've read through that already. But just some takeaways from discussions that we had at the committee level. We really wanted to consolidate goals. We thought we liked the goals that we had in the past. We think they're important, but kind of like the priority standards discussion, you can get a little goal fatigue. And so we wanted to consolidate those goals to be, keep our priorities on high impact strategies. So that's one takeaway. Progress monitoring. How we're going to do progress monitoring is only on the second meeting of the month. That's when we'll focus on progress monitoring. We wanted to simplify it and utilize a dashboard, simplify the process so any individual, whether they're a board member or a committee member, could look and see, well, how are we doing? And that's where the dashboard that Mr. Roberts created last year has kind of been modified a little bit to look a little bit different and to help us track and be that one place, easy shop to see how are we doing. And so that dashboard is going to help us do that. That's where we're going to start. Every progress monitoring is right there, and we can see, well, how are we doing? Is that goal yet in progress? And all of them right now are in progress. When we get to the progress monitoring dates, was that goal met? Was it not met, or did we exceed what we anticipated in that goal? And so people will be able to look at that. Along those lines, what are we using to determine progress monitoring? And those are the metrics. We wanted to do a better job of embedding and clarifying and articulating what those metrics are, so anybody can look at that goal and say, well, this is what is going into progress. Did we make it or did we not make it? These are the metrics that we're using. But I will say along those lines, we had good conversation in our last meeting about the need to expand on those. We're very survey-based, and we want to make sure that we aren't just survey-based and perceptual-based. We want to build on those and looking to other leading indicators. So over the course of the next year, we're going to look at all of these goals and try to find additional metrics and leading indicators for success. Things like proficiency level in literacy proficiency through grade 3, percentage of students in 2 extracurriculars or co-curriculars, the percentage of families attending parent-teacher conferences, the percentage of students that have reached concentrator status in career readiness, things like that we believe are also important metrics. Then we'll just continue to build out those primary and secondary metrics over the course of time. Moving on into the Board Education Strategic Plan Progress Monitoring Annual Plan. One other thing that was discussed at through strategic planning, and you saw a good representation of that now or earlier in this meeting, was tying board education to our progress goals and our progress monitoring and our strategic plan goals. And so you'll see we had in this, looking at guaranteed and viable curriculum was our board education for this meeting. So that ties directly into our progress monitoring for next meeting when we do our progress monitoring. So you've had a chance to have some capacity built and a little bit of understanding, and then build to that. How did we achieve or what progress have we made towards that goal? And so you can see that annual plan is much more purposeful. I still think there's room in our board education to do the other things that may not be directly related to our strategic plan that are still important for governance, but the focus should be building our capacity as a board and as a district and as a community around what our strategic plan goals are. I wanted to point out and invite the staff, all the community, but the board as well. The Allied Picnic, the Stutzman County Coalition is hosting their 3rd annual Allied Picnic. That'll be held in McElroy Park on September 6th at 2 o'clock. And that is an opportunity and an event to celebrate and build networks of individuals striving for inclusivity in Jamestown. So you as board members are invited, the community as a whole, our staff, all invited to the Allied Picnic. I wanted to draw attention in my report to the Angel Fund. A few years ago, we started our Angel Fund, and that supports our students and our families that exhibit the greatest need. That's primarily in the past been focused on school lunches and making sure that unpaid balances can be supported, so our families that need that support financially the most. But it also does other things. It supports 2 food pantries at Jamestown Public Schools. We have other extenuating circumstances that we support. with our families in need. And so I get these questions a lot, how can I help? And so anybody that would like to support the Angel Fund could contact Christy Grounds at Central Office, 252-1950. And like I said, the Angel Fund goes to support those families that need additional support with school lunch. It supports our 2 food pantries, and then it also supports students with various extenuating needs. Things like, those that are in the Blue Jay Academy, but which is a online-based, utilizing NDCDE, which is online-based, but don't have functional internet at home. That might be a way for us to support those students as well. So different things that the Angel Fund can support. The last thing that I had is our spotlight for this meeting, and I want to welcome our 2 new J1 teachers joining us from the Philippines, Mrs. Parango and Miss Watko. They are both in elementary special education, and we want to welcome them to our community, but also welcome our community, or thank our community for welcoming those individuals. And I want to recognize Adam Gaylor, who has done an awful lot of work in all of the things that come with bringing international teachers into our community. That's quite a bit of work to get them to this point, and then to just get them ready to teach. Whether it's finding a place for them to live, getting all their paperwork completed, all of that stuff that we might take for granted that takes an awful lot of time. Adam has taken the lead on it. I also want to recognize Paula Greenike and Sadie Leck, who are our mentors for those individuals. So as they get used to what special education is like in the United States, they have those mentors, those people that they get to rely on every day. So I want to recognize those individuals as well. So with that, I would stand for questions.
Any questions for Dr. Leck about his superintendent's report? No? Okay. I just had one question with the Angel Fund. If someone wants to specify, I want to give to the food pantry, or I would like to give to other needs, can they do that, or is it all one fund?
It's really, the Angel Fund is one fund that goes to support multiple things. We have a lot of different needs, and that fund has over time depleted. We had a great deal of support for the Angel Fund, and it was Mr. Rohr who really started what became the Angel Fund, and we had a great deal of interest and community support around that, and over time that has dwindled somewhat. And so if anybody's looking to support, 252-1950 and talk to Christy if they're interested in supporting. We get those calls once a month of people that want to support.
And thank you to our community who does support it. Very much appreciated.
Great to show the numbers on the K-5 enrollment. Interested in at the middle school and high school level, kind of where we're at relative to last year, trends and things.
Great segue to our meeting our second meeting in September. We'll have an enrollment report for K through 5 for what we call our fourth Friday report. So we'll have that coming up next superintendent's report. Or it'll be in our consent agenda. But
Jason?
Back to the food pantries and Angel Fund, have we put together a list of high use items, say out of the food pantry, hygiene things, in case, because I'm assuming we don't need just monetary donations for that. If somebody would like to donate a high use, things that are gone right away, that would be an option?
Possibly, depends on what it is, but just talk to the counselors at the individual buildings might be the place. And we do have the Be Unique as an example. We have the Be Unique boutique at the high school, which has clothing for students. And that isn't included in the Angel Fund necessarily, but that's another way that we support those families. So really talking to a counselor would be the best place to go with that. The Great Plains Food Alliance they're an amazing group that is able to support at no cost most of the items in the food pantry. Every once in a while, because of the high interest items, things like peanut butter or ground beef or something like that might have a cost that they don't have with the Great Plains Food Alliance. When the food truck comes, we might have to purchase those, but it's a couple $100 a year.
Any other questions? Okay. If not, moving on in our agenda, we have nothing under old business, under new business, nothing under activities, buildings, grounds, curriculum, assessment, instruction, or finance. Number 5, operations. A, approval of the 2025 to 2026 strategic plan and subsequent number 1 strategic plan dashboard and number 2 strategic plan progress monitoring and board education annual plan. Is there a motion? Motion by Steve. Is there a second? Second by Owen. Aaron, would you like to do some start with a discussion?
Yeah, and a lot of it, I'll reiterate what Dr. Lick has already stated, and then highlight some other points here. But so just process-wise, this was an update that occurred over several different meetings and several hours worth of work, both within those meetings and then offline from the administration to support the updates. And thanks to Dr. Lick and Adam for supporting that. So this year's update to the strategic plan, we maintain the same framework and continuing with the alignment to the accreditation criteria, but applying some of that continuous improvement. In the course of our conversations, there's really 2 main themes that we really highlighted on and focused on, and that is the consolidation of the goals, as Dr. Leck had mentioned. There was just so much overlap, and it wasn't really clear on it's just too much to digest. And so taking advantage of that overlap and then doing that consolidation, I think helps really simplify it and gives us a little better focus on the goals that we really want to hit on. The other item was ensuring the metrics were relevant and provided information to all the stakeholders as far as what is the health of our plans and our policies and our processes. So, and that's really what those metrics are used to gauge is are we giving to achieve our goals, do we have the right things in place in order to get there? And if we are meeting those goals, that suggests that we have a healthy organization. If we're not meeting those goals, what do we need to do different? So making sure that those metrics are aligned and they make sense and they're relevant. There was quite a bit of conversation on that and a lot of iteration back and forth. So, and just as an example, last year, we had a lot of inventory and subjective type metrics, and it was just like, what is this really doing for us? What does this mean? Well, we couldn't answer the question, so we said, why are we doing it? Why are we measuring that? So things like that, so it helped simplify the metric side of it and make it more relevant. As Dr. Lick also had mentioned, this year's metrics are weighted on surveys, the Cognia community and staff surveys and all that, so which gives us real good perspective and gives us a pulse on how we're doing from the various stakeholders. But then we talked, how can we balance that then with some empirical data that, we're already collecting. We already have data out there. What is it that we already are collecting? How can we use that to help us gauge the environment, looking at both positive and negative, not just how many detentions are there in a given semester, but what other positive aspects that can we pull from to help us give some leading indicators and not have to wait for a survey or not have to wait for an assessment and get some more real-time data. So that isn't something that's included in this update, but that's an item for, again, continuous improvement that we identified that said this would be helpful. How do we get there? And then lastly, just with the dashboard and board education plan, just kind of getting all of these different elements aligned, simplifying that communication. We really felt that was needed because, getting to do a progress update on a specific line item and, how does that apply in the overall context of what we're doing. And I think that dashboard will give us that quick little snapshot and then allow us then to drill down into the specific detail that is interesting to us at that specific meeting. So, that's the update. So that's the culmination of the recommendation that's being put in front of you here. So.
Jamie, anything to add to that?
No, Aaron summed it up pretty well. I think we have some really clear driving forces, some way to gather some data, and with room for improvement in the future, obviously. But I think this also gives us, this plan gives us a chance to pivot, to really focus and pivot if we need to, and I think it's
Good. And appreciate the board allowing the task force and the committee to work on this, because and thank you to Aaron and Jamie. A lot of hours went into in meeting and kind of really having some deep dive discussions of, what are we measuring, what are we trying to get at, and well, that sounds great, but how are we going to measure it, right? And so a lot of time went into it. So I appreciate your time as well, and the board even allowing us to dig into that and bring this product back. And Mr. Gaylor and Dr. Leck also we had them rework stuff and bring it back, and bring it back. What else are we measuring, and what other data points do we have? So we had them bring those forward as well. So appreciate their time in this as well. Any questions from the board at this time regarding what's in front of you? Any changes you'd like to see? Any tweaks? Are there any concerns? Owen.
One, I noted from the meeting minutes from the last one, you talked about getting different stakeholders engaged in the process, especially our staff, our teaching staff, and thinking about going back to negotiations. I think that was a big issue of just new initiatives and things that we might be pushing that are in support of the strategic plan, but maybe counter to workloads and expectations and things like that from the teachers. So just wondering, I noticed that comment, but and the first thing of culture of learning is increased stakeholder engagement. So I was just wondering how that, envisioning how, is there a plan to get the teachers more involved, I guess?
Yep. And I think you notice that we went back to some of those metrics also that we're already gathering about engagement, and we're using, those are built into the measurements that we're using about that. So that is, we're measuring that. So Aaron, do you have more to add to that?
Yeah, so that's what we looked at, what was it, goal 2 here, strategic focus 2, leadership for learning. And looking at, ensuring that the staff are involved in the process and through committee assignments and having their voice be heard. We talked about, in the case where, you're on a committee, you have some ideas that aren't adopted by the committee or move forward from the committee, and how is that dealt with? And, so it's like there's a metric in place to ensure that there is that collaboration with, with that 60% of staff. And really that's a minimum. It can be more than that. But that's where we kind of took that point and applied it to the strategic plan.
Any other questions? Okay. We have a motion and a second for approval of the 2025 to 2026 strategic plan. Number 1, subsequent strategic plan dashboard, and number 2, strategic plan progress monitoring and board education annual plan. Any other discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Moving on to nothing under personnel. Under policy and procedures, we have A, approval of recommended policies. There are 4 listed with a letter A. Do you mind if we do them all at one time? Okay. Number 1, first reading of policy ABAA, School District Organization Plan. Number 2, first reading of policy ACCB, Protection for Student Victims of Sexual Offenses. Number 3, second reading of the policy ACG, Child Safety Liaison Work Group and Mandatory Training. And number 4, amended BCBA, Public Participation at Board Meetings, and subsequent amended BCBA-E, Public Participation Form. Is there a motion? Motion by Aaron? Second by Steve. We have a motion and a second for approval of 1 through 4 and letter A. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Number 8, under tuition A, approval of 2025 to 2026 tuition agreements. Number 1, Montpelier. Number 2, Yellowstone. Number 3, Medina. Number 4, Jamestown. Is there a motion? Motion by Jamie? Second by Jason. We have a motion, a second for approval of the 2025 to 2026 tuition agreements. Number 1, Montpelier. 2, Yellowstone. 3, Medina. And 4, Jamestown. Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Yep. Nothing under other items for future agenda or retreat, and we will get probably like a doodle sent out, or we might add just a couple extra dates in there, and just seeing when everybody is available over the next several months. So we probably won't add December 24th. So that's, as you can see, it was kind of balancing there, December to January. Yes, Jamie.
I know we're just starting off our year here, but I'm sure we'd all love to hear an update when available from the Blue Jays Nest as well, since that's a new program for us.
Okay. Yep, good idea. And there was some discussion today on dual credits and AP. Just even if you want to include it in your superintendent's report, just the number of students that are involved, and maybe we'll get that report at the 15th meeting too, with some of those numbers on AP and dual credit, the number of students participating, and just include it in your superintendent's report, just for our information, and if it's up or down. So, anything else? Items for future agenda? Okay. At any time, please let myself or Dr. Luck know if you have an item for future agenda. We have some meetings to be scheduled. And we have a communications meeting on Thursday, September 4th, 2025 at 4 p.m. in the district office conference room. Health Insurance Committee meeting on Monday, September 8th, 2025 at 3:45 p.m. in the district office conference room. Finance Committee meeting on Monday, September 8th, 2025 at 5 p.m. in the central office conference room. School board meeting on Monday, September 15th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room. Budget hearing on Monday, September 15th, 2025 at 6 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room. And the Health Insurance Committee might be in the multi-purpose, it is in the multi-purpose room, so that's just a change in location for that one, and we'll note that. Any other meetings that we missed, the committee meetings? Okay. If not, click on your monthly superintendent evaluation, Section 3, Human Resources Management, and Section 5, Community Relations. There being no further business before the board, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.